These are the best metal albums of 2024. This is the second of two parts, and this video will cover numbers 20 to 1. I will be covering all genres of metal, which will include thrash, death metal, black metal, heavy metal, and a few other subgenres. These are all albums that I have reviewed as either part of my new metal releases or a standalone review. So let me get started. This is the top 20. Coming in number 20 is Poppy with Negative Spaces. This album is a big departure from her previous album, Zig. The songs are more intense, and there is more genre blending. The album was produced by Jordan Fish, formerly Bring Me the Horizon. The album combines metalcore, industrial, pop metal, and arena rock. There are also hints of synth pop and hyperpop. The album opens with Have You Had Enough, a heavy industrial pop track showcasing Poppy's vocal versatility. New Way Out emerges as a standalone single, and that addresses personal themes of overcoming despair while blending pop influences from Madonna and Britney Spears with an industrial edge. They're All Around Us pushes boundaries with intense screaming vocals and deathcore reminiscent riffs. There are a few other standout tracks, such as Crystallized, which echoes 80s pop, Vital leans into electronica, Push Go channels Madonna's Ray of Light era. The title track Negative Spaces can also be compared to Hole's Celebrity Skin. Unlike the more electronic-focused Zig, this album has more complex, heavier sound that merges pop with aggressive musical elements. The album has only been out for a few weeks, but I've been listening to this one a lot. Coming in at number 19 is Exhorder with Defectum, Omnium. I thought this album showed off the band's evolution beyond their Pantera comparisons. Most of the album is rooted in their early thrash and groove metal origins, but the album also has a lot of versatility. The album opens with Wrath of the Properties, establishing a heavy groove metal sound with a southern metal influences. Subsequent tracks like Forever and Beyond Despair and Tale of the Unsound Minds reveal the band's willingness to experiment, blending hardcore punk, doom metal, and thrash. Other notable tracks include the one song that's kind of Pantera reminiscent, and that's Year of the Goat. And then there's Taken by Flames, which kind of mixes lots of genres. And that one reminded me of Crowbar with their sludge style. The band also took a very dynamic approach to the album. They recorded songs that seamlessly transition between aggressive riffs, tempo changes, and there are lots of varied vocal styles. The band has a very unique sound. It's a fusion of groove, sludge, doom, southern metal, hardcore. It's one of those albums I've been listening to a lot, and I haven't heard a lot of other channels talk about it, but number 19. And number 18 is Simone Simons with Vermilion. She's the lead singer of the symphonic metal band Epica. This is her debut solo album. The album features 10 tracks, includes guest appearances from Alyssa White-Gluz from Arch Enemy and Mark Jansen, who is Epica's guitarist. The opening track, Eterna, shows off her signature operatic vocals. These blend Middle Eastern sounds with symphonic metal. The song features intricate elements like choir vocals in Latin, futuristic instrumentation, and heavy guitar riffs. There's Cradle to the Grave, featuring Alyssa White-Gluz, and this is one of my favorites because you can hear the contrast between Simone's melodic singing and Alyssa's death metal growls. Other standout tracks include Weight of My World, which incorporate electronic and industrial elements, and The Core, which is an experimental track featuring Mark Jansen's guitar work and the death growls. The entire album features songs that explore different styles, such as symphonic, electronic, and heavy metal. My original score was 8.5 out of 10, and I still stand by that score. Coming in number 17 is Satan with Songs in Crimson. This is the band's 7th full-length album, and they stay true to their roots. They are a new wave of British heavy metal band. They started back in 1979, and one of the first bands of this genre. And this was actually the first time I ever listened to this band. I was surprised to find their sound was very close to early Iron Maiden, Angel Witch, Witchfinder General. I was expecting more of a first-wave black metal sound, but when I heard it was a straightforward, melodic heavy metal style. The album has a retro sound. The production feels like it was recorded in the late 70s or early 80s. The album has 10 tracks. It's 44 minutes long. It opens with Frantic Zero, which is a fast-paced, riff-heavy track featuring melodic guitar solo. Then there's Era, The Day Will Come. This shifts to a slower, groovier tone with a standout guitar tone. There's also tracks like Whore of Babylon that has those galloping riffs reminiscent of early Iron Maiden, while Sacramental Rites has clean guitar intro and a catchy, darkly thematic melodies which remind me of the band Ghost. There were a few other standout tracks such as Turn the Tide, which sounds like proto-thrash. Then there's the closing track Deadly Crimson, which had a darker, merciful fate type of atmosphere. It's not breaking any new ground, but solid retro heavy metal, strong riffing, and an occult edge. If you're a fan of vintage metal, you'll like this album. And number 16 is Oceans of Slumber with Where Gods Fear to Speak. The album is a return to the band's heavier roots after their softer previous release, Starlight and Ash, which I didn't really like that much. The album was recorded in Bogota, Colombia in 2023. It's a concept album that was recorded in the form of a post-apocalyptic survival movie. The album has 10 tracks. It's approximately 55 minutes long. The album features the band's unique blend of gothic rock, doom metal, and progressive metal. The thing that surprised me when I listened to it is that I heard death growls from the lead vocalist, Cammy Gilbert, and the album had a few guest vocalists such as Mikkel Stan from Dark Tranquillity and Fernando Ribeiro from Moonspell. Some standout tracks include the title track, Run From the Light, and Poem of Ecstasy, and it shows the band's ability to alternate between intense metal riffs and softer, more atmospheric sections. The album concludes with a cover of Chris Isaak's Wicked Game, which I thought was not too bad. My original score was 8 out of 10, but it has gone up since then, and it's on my top 20, so it's definitely a great album. Coming in at number 15 is Riding Christ with Pro Cristal. This is my official Dark Horse album of the year. When I first heard this album, I didn't like it. I thought it was boring, but I gave it another chance. And then I've been listening to it over and over, and it grew on me, and I've been listening to it on repeat since then. It also inspired me to check out more Greek metal bands, which is probably like my favorite country of metal at this point. But anyway, it's the first album I've ever heard from the band. I know they used to be a black metal band, but they evolved into some type of gothic, epic black metal band. They're hard to describe. To me, they sound like the type of music you listen to while watching a Gladiator movie or playing God of War on the PlayStation. It's epic battle metal. A lot of people said the songs sound very similar throughout the album, and it's true. But after a few listens, you appreciate each song for what it is. So with that being said, I thought it was very good. I like the epic nature of the album, so for that reason, I have it ranked right here. Coming in at number 14 is Body Count's latest album, Merciless. The band has been releasing lots of great albums in these past few years. I think the band made their comeback in 2014 with Manslaughter and continued with Bloodlust and Carnivore. The last few albums had lots of high-profile musical collaborations, and this album, Merciless, features guest appearances from various metal and rock artists, including Corpse Grinder from Cannibal Corpse, Joe Bad from Fit for an Autopsy, Howard Jones from Killswitch Engage, and Max Cavalera, originally from Sepultura. And there's also a cover of Pink Floyd's Comfortably Numb, with updated lyrics that kind of reflect societal issues. Musically, the album has lots of genres. There's hardcore, thrash metal, death metal, and rap metal. As for the lyrics, as always, they address social and political concerns, violence, media division, personal resilience, global tensions. Lots of great songs, The Purge, World War. This one came out only a few weeks ago. My original score was a 9 out of 10. I still stand by it, and it's in my top 20. Coming in number 13 is Never Neverland by Unto Others. This band is from Portland, Oregon. They were formerly known as Idle Hands. It's a very unique band that combines gothic post-punk influences from bands like The Cure, Joy Division, Bauhaus, with traditional heavy metal. The album has 17 tracks. It includes 2 short instrumentals, and this really shows the band's ability to seamlessly blend genres. Tracks like Butterfly and Angel of the Night showcase their post-punk roots with low-register vocals reminiscent of bands like Sisters of Mercy and Killing Joke. The album incorporates elements of heavy metal with songs like Mama Likes the Door Closed, and this features this thrash-inspired guitar riffs. The vocal styles vary throughout the album. So they reminded me of both Peter Steele from Type O Negative and Glenn Danzig at times. There are some occasional death growls that kind of adds like a new layer of sound. And there's a cover of the Ramones' Pet Sematary, which I think is actually even better than the original. My original score was 9 out of 10, and I stand by it. So for that reason, it's in the top 20. Coming in number 12 is Riot V with Mean Streets. This is a band that's been around for many years. They date back to the late 70s. Their original name was Riot, and then eventually they evolved and changed to Riot V. So they started as a traditional heavy metal band. They moved towards US power metal. I thought it was very good. The song Feel the Fire is one of my most listened to songs of the entire year. Very catchy song. There were a lot of cool deep cuts in the album. The title track, Mean Streets, is awesome, and another one called Love Beyond the Grave. That had kind of a cringe title, but I like it a lot. This came out early in the year, and I've been revisiting it frequently. Coming in at number 11 is Kerry King's debut solo album, From Hell I Rise. Now, when this one first came out, everyone said it was just a continuation of the Slayer sound, specifically their final album, Repentless. But I have been listening to this, and I think it's really good. It's a really good thrash album. The album has Mark Osageda on vocals, and that gave the album a slight Death Angel type of influence. The album opens with an instrumental track, Diablo, that sets the tone, but other standout tracks include Where I Reign, that captures classic Slayer-style heavy riffs, Idle Hands, which I consider to be one of the album's best tracks, with a galloping rhythm. The album has lots of versatility, ranging from aggressive, fast-paced tracks like Everything I Hate About You, which is reminiscent of Rain and Blood, to slower atmospheric songs like Tension. And number 10 is the Opeth album that came out before I knew Opeth was going to release a new album, but it's not Opeth. It's Under the Foreign Sun by Piah. They are a Brazilian band. They've been active since 2010. It's their third album, and it immediately caught my attention because it reminded me of mid-2000s Opeth, but with its own unique twist. The album is awesome. It features complex progressive death metal with clean singing and death growls. What sets them apart is their interesting use of additional elements like saxophone that adds this cool jazzy element to it. Standout track for me was Fallow Garden, an 11-minute epic. It showcases the band's real incredible musical range. It moves from acoustic guitars to heavy death metal sections and incorporates clean vocals, has a pretty cool saxophone interlude, and feels completely unexpected. And other tracks like As Islands Sink and Macaw's Lament further show the band's musical versatility. For me, the album filled a specific void left by Opeth's change in musical direction years ago. Keep in mind, this is a few months before the new Opeth album, which I'm sure you expect to be on this list. But my original score was a 9 out of 10, and it still holds up after all these months. Coming in at number 9 is Fleshgod Apocalypse with Opera. This album still holds up many months later. The album was inspired by a tragic event experienced by the frontman Francesco Paoli, and he survived a near-fatal mountain climbing accident and left him hospitalized. The album is structured like a 10-act theatrical piece. They draw inspiration from composers like Verdi and Puccini. Each track feels like a movement in a larger narrative, explores themes of pain, fear, redemption, and some standout tracks are At War With My Soul, Morphine Waltz, and this album has lots of brutal death metal riffs, orchestral arrangements, and operatic vocals. It's a type of album that's kind of like a symphonic metal album. At times they sound more like Nightwish, but it's also death metal. So it's a nice blend of the two genres. Coming in at number 8 is Lucifer with Lucifer V. This was the first album I listened to from the band. I instantly became a fan. It was released back in January. I've been listening to it ever since. This band has frontwoman Joanna Sadonis, and they have this nostalgic yet fresh sound, kind of like paying homage to Black Sabbath, but they're not exactly copying them, if that makes any sense. So the album has 9 tracks. It blends vintage hard rock and horror-inspired themes. We got the haunting opener, Fallen Angel, the final track, Nothing Left to Lose But My Life. And each song offers a distinct musical experience. Standout tracks like Riding Reaper and Slow Dance to the Crypt, showcasing the band's versatility, mixing sultry ballads with upbeat rock rhythms. What truly impressed me was the album's musical depth. The guitar work is awesome. There's melodic solos, there's heavy riffs that echoes classic metal bands like Judas Priest and Deep Purple. Joanna's vocals add this eerie and mesmerizing quality to each track. The band draws inspiration from classic horror movies, which is evident not just in the music, but in the music videos. I recommend this album if you're a fan of that retro hard rock or vintage rock. And my original score was 8.5 out of 10. I would even bump it up to a 9. Coming in at number 7 is Nightwish's latest album, Yesterwynde, and I think it might be their best release since Dark Passion Play. Coming into this album, I was hesitant. It's their first without Marco Hietala, and the previous albums with Floor Jansen were a little underwhelming. However, the album really changed my perspective. It was inspired by the personal loss of Tuomas Holopin's father, and it has a darker, more emotional tone that sets it apart from their recent work. The album is a nice blend of symphonic metal, fantasy, raw emotion. Tracks like An Ocean of Strange Lands and the Anti-Thera Mechanism showcase the band's incredible music complexity. Floor Jansen has some really great vocals, and they're also supported by Troy Donackley, who also has some vocals. And the album has lots of different genres. You got heavy metal riffs, folk influences, orchestral arrangements. Other standout tracks are The Children of Atta and Something Wicked. My original score was 9 out of 10. I felt like it's a return to form. I've been listening to this a lot, and I stand by my 9 to 10. Really great album. Coming in number 6 is Blood Incantation with Absolute Elsewhere. They are a progressive death metal band from Denver, Colorado. The album plays homage to prog rock bands of the 70s, and it's composed of two 20-minute songs divided into 3 tablets each. The album takes you on this mind-bending journey through all these different musical landscapes. They blend death metal with psychedelic space rock. And we got the first song, Stargate, which starts with some old school death metal, and then they shift into the spacey progressive rock. And I was surprised. There's a lot of these like Pink Floyd-esque keyboard sounds and David Gilmour style guitar solos that are mixed between all these like heavy death metal passages. I know I've heard progressive death metal before, but this was different. So for me, it's a masterpiece. It deserved a 9 out of 10 rating. And it's high up on my list. I thought it was going to be number 1, but I still have 5 that are up above it. Coming in number 5 is Saxon with Hellfire and Damnation. This is their 24th studio album. But this album's great. You got The Prophecy, you got Supercharger, and then you got tracks like Madame Guillotine and 1066. And they show the band like incorporating history into heavy metal, and they have Fire and Steel and Hellfire and Damnation, which are kind of more of those like old school songs. And the band proves that this band gets better with age. I always like say that whenever I review Saxon. Biff Byford's vocals are really good. My original score was 8.5 out of 10. I'd say it goes up another point, and it's a really great album. My next 2 albums are going to be thrash albums. So coming in number 4 is Suicidal Angels with Profane Prayer. This was released back in March through Nuclear Blast. It's their 9th album, 48 minutes long. And the band is different than most of the other thrash bands I've been talking about because they have their own style of melodic thrash, which at times it sounds like early Slayer, but their songs have so many different changes and peaks and valleys, and they get very melodic. Another band from Greece, my favorite country for metal bands at this time, and the album opens with a great song, When the Lions Die. This has a Creator type of sound, mixed with a little bit of like a Mon Amarth. Then there's Crypts of Madness, which has the Slayer-esque tempo shifts. Purified by Fire has speed and breakdowns. Deathstalker features some guest musicians and lots of harmony, clean vocals, and lots of thrash in the title track, such as that song and the song Return of the Reaper and Guard the Insane. More straightforward thrash, but just the entire album is really great. And the album closes with a 10-minute song called The Fire Past the Face, with some Middle Eastern influences and things like that. One of 2024's top thrash albums, but not the top thrash album. That's going to be the next one. Coming in number 3 is Morbid Saint with Swallowed by Hell. This is their first studio album in 30 years. They are an old school thrash metal band from Sheboygan, Wisconsin. The album is packed with aggressive riffs, pummeling drums, and a dark atmosphere. Another band part of that thrash resurgence I've been talking about. They formed in 1984. They released their debut in 1989 called Spectrum of Death. And that album was compared to Creator and Demolition Hammer. They disbanded in 1994 and they made another comeback. So this album came out early in the year, back in February. Some of the standout tracks are Rise from the Ashes with the fast-paced, intricate riffs, Fear Incarnate, which is an old-school thrash metal sound mixing dark, haunting elements, and Burn Pit, which is a blend of thrash and death metal with neoclassical influences. I predicted that this album was going to be my thrash metal album of the year back when it was released, and it actually is my thrash metal album of the year. But I have 2 more albums that are above this, which is going to be my number 2 and my number 1. Now, my number 2 and my number 1, I went back and forth because one of them has been out for a long time and the other one was just released. So I went back and forth, but I decided to go this way, so here it is. Number 2, I have Judas Priest with Invincible Shield. It came out back in March, and I thought it was going to be album of the year, but it just missed it. But it just starts off with the great singles, Panic Attack. It just has lots of melodic guitar intros, hard-hitting riffs. Trial by Fire has this melodic and powerful riffs as well. Crown of Horns is a little more accessible, but a really great solo. The Serpent and the King, a little more heavier, Painkiller-esque type of song. And the title track, Invincible Shield, which blended classic and modern Priest. But other great tracks were Devil in Disguise, Gates of Hell. Those ones had lots of melody and heaviness. And other standouts, Escape from Reality had these like Black Sabbath like guitar riffs and Giants in the Sky. Tribute to rock legends, and the 3 bonus tracks. My favorite of them was The Lodger, which is kind of more of like a 70s rock sound. But overall, Invincible Shield, strong follow-up to Firepower. Judas Priest, another band that I think are releasing some of their best material. But anyway, great album. Not my number one, but my number one is going to be Opeth with The Last Will and Testament. I've been anticipating this album, and as soon as I heard the first single, everyone was talking about the Return of the Death Growls. But the thing that sealed the deal for me was I heard that Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull was on this album. And you know I'm a big Jethro Tull fan. So we all know this was like a return to the roots. They brought back the death metal elements, but this album still has lots of progressive rock. The songs are shorter, varied vocal styles, and there are just lots of great songs all throughout this. It talks about this patriarch's will and the family secrets. Ian Anderson has lots of spoken word passages, and just a great album, and it's my album of the year. So that is all. So if you missed part 1 where I spoke about number 40 to 21, I'm going to stick that right here. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please give the video a like. Helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.